All right. Good evening, everybody. We're excited to have you on this wonderful webinar. My co-hosts will be joining. The Society of Women Innovators in Pain Management welcome you to our first in our series of 4 mentorship webinars. Today, we're calling this Mentorship in Motion. So how do you give flight and wings to your mentorship relationship? Where does it start so that you can set it on the perfect course for a beautiful journey? So that's the idea. A lot of words that have to do with transportation, mentorship in motion. I'm Dr. Jordan Tate, and I'm out of the Atlanta, Georgia area. I'm a founding member of WIPM and very excited to be on with you guys this evening. Mentorship has meant a lot to me in my maturation in this space and has been an important and impactful part of my life, most recently with developing mentees in the space and really focusing on female partnerships and really finding a way that we can flourish together so that we can all rise up and really enjoy our time in interventional pain management. So I'm more than honored and blessed to bring on my friend and partner, my colleague, Dr. Kiran Patel, and I'm going to allow her to take the floor and introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Jordan, and thank you all for joining us tonight. I have been involved with WIPM since its foundation too, and I'm currently the vice president for the society, and I'm so excited for us to be bringing these events because we're all super busy with our schedules. Many of us are mothers and wives that I think this career development series that really brings things into, allows you to kind of build this into your schedule is so essential. And our focus for this season is really going to be professional development. For those of you who are able to join us at the annual meeting last year on Sunday, we started a little bit of this conversation in the workshop, a mentorship workshop. And where we're going to start our conversation tonight is exactly kind of where we left it, which, you know, I think there's so many areas of our lives, right? There's the career, there's the work-life balance, there's, you know, the nitty-gritties of do I make a shift? Do I go to private practice? Do I go to academics? What does private-demics look like? How do I start to publish? And then there's the aspects of other things. How do I make sure that I'm taking care of my own health and wellness? And so I think the first question that we kind of left people with on Sunday of the last annual meeting was really centered around the foundation of how do you decide the things that, that fill your bucket up and the things that empty your bucket? And how do you use that to be the things that guide maybe where you feel you wish you had more full of a bucket and you wish you had more guidance or you wish you had more support in a certain aspect of your life. So for me, how do I decide where I need help in my life? I kind of try to take a step back and say, what are the things at the moment or in general that fill me up and the things that drain me? And are there things that are excessively draining me and do I need support in reaching my goals to minimize those things that are draining me and maximize the things that fill my bucket up? So that's my personal thing of how I try to do it. Jordan, you have a great way that you suggest to, colleagues and mentees about how to identify areas that they may benefit from mentorship.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this comes to introspection, understanding yourself, what's important to you, where you view yourself a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So, what are your goals? And what is the path getting there? Once you identify your goals and you think about what does the path look like to get there, then you have to decide what makes you happy, like you said, what fills up your bucket. What do you want to allow onto your plate when you go through the buffet of life? Or if you've ever experienced any opportunities to engage in mindfulness meditation, you think about, what thoughts do I want to allow in? What do I want to block out? And it's the same processes that you need to go through in order to get to your goals, right? And so you have to start by identifying what your goals are, what your process to get there is, what makes you happy, what gives you undue stress. Think about, as you go through your daily life and assigning these goals, what's going to be important and move the needle to achieve the goal versus what is something that is only going to serve to drain you and doesn't give you any purpose and happiness. Once you really spent time kind of unpacking all of that, and that's not a 5-minute activity, right? This is something that requires journaling. This is something that requires thinking about your personality, what you like, what you identify with. Some people like astrology. Just going to throw that out there, right? Like knowing your sign. It sounds very woo-woo, but in reality, there's a lot of opportunity to really understand some of those basic driving, motivating, and descriptors of your personality. And what that really does is it helps you boil down and understand, what makes you tick, what makes you go. So as you set your course on heading towards goals and needing to get there, that's when you start to identify, well, I already have these resources for this goal. Where do I lack the resources? And that's where you start to identify the areas for mentorship. And we're going to bring on Dr. Robin Mata, who's one of our favorite physiatry colleagues out of Miami. And she's going to be joining us this evening because she and I have, over the past couple of years, been able to engage in a lovely mentor-mentee relationship that has gone both ways. I think initially I might have been in that mentor role, but I think she's taught me as much as I've taught her over the past, how long have we known each other? 2 years, I'm going to say.
I think 2 years.
Something about 2 years, right? And through our relationship together, we've been able to work on some publications, research, getting her on the podium, identifying areas, goals that she had, such as getting into a great fellowship. And very proud to announce that you're going to fellowship.
Thank you. At Rush.
At Rush, yep. I just wanted you to make the announcement. Yeah. We're so very, very proud of her achievements and very proud of the relationship that we've built, and would love to share with you guys a little bit more about how that developed and flourished. And so that's going to be kind of the first section here tonight.
So Robin, how have you, as somebody early in your career, how have you tried to identify areas that you really want mentorship in and areas to go and to seek mentorship? And how have you prioritized that, right? Because there might be like the work-life balance, there might be the, career development, it might be, procedural skills. What does that look like for you so far?
I think Dr. Tate had a really good point when she was talking about identifying kind of like your personality and then what resources you have available to you at the moment. Early on, I realized that I was learning more about and becoming interested in research, but I really had a lot to learn. And there was definitely a lot of passion and interest. But in terms of knowledge base and application, I still had a lot to learn. Other interests that I had were a little bit more long-term, things like what does it look like to start your own practice or be CMO? What does that mean? What does that entail? And so in terms of prioritizing, what helped me was looking at, temporal. What is short term? What is long term? That doesn't mean that you can't learn about the long term as you're going along and collecting information, but really you need to find out, what is the piece that I need the most right now that will connect with those long-term goals? And then I can continue to work on these long-term goals. So in our particular case, as she alluded to, research was really, the piece where I said, I have a little bit of a foundation and a background through MPH. And now I really want to expand into the pain realm. And one of the things that I loved about Dr. Tate and why I'm like, I think she would be just a great person to speak to in general was just her openness and willingness. She had a wealth of knowledge, but she was very down to earth and easy to talk to in terms of, okay, well, what are your interests? Okay, what are your ideas? Let's see how we can sort of customize this based on the tools you have and the ideas that you have that can make it workable. Which was really great because that helped me identify the resources that I had and even some that I wasn't aware of, and be able to bring all of those tools together into something cohesive.
That's awesome. I just read a book that it's called Everything is Figure Outable. And one of the questions they ask is, what would you allow happen in your life in your wildest dreams? And I think sometimes all of us, regardless of where you are in your career, like you got to ask yourself that sometimes. You got to give yourself that freedom to think about, because sometimes you can't identify what you're lacking. I mean, and I think for us who have been in practice, Jordan, you can tell me how you feel about this. Sometimes that's relevant, right? You've been doing this for a while, you kind of know the things you're focusing on, but then maybe there's other things that you can't name yet. And sometimes just asking yourself, like, what's trying to get to that missing piece. What do you think? How do you feel about
Yeah,
that?
yeah. I think we're all very guilty of getting bogged down in the daily details and the muck and the mire, and allowing yourself this creative outlet of just saying, if I had all the resources and all the time and all the energy, what would I want to see happen? Right. And then, maybe with pure delusion, just going for it and finding out what's the worst that can happen. You might get told no, it might not, you might fall short, it might not work out. But if you never head in that direction with that, unbridled delusion, I guess, you will never find it. But I think it's a wonderful exercise. I mean, it's one of those things, when I'm stressed or overwhelmed, right? Like I definitely like to think, if none of this mattered that I'm stressed about, which most of the time it doesn't, but if none of this mattered, where could my life be? What could I achieve? And then you realize that, well, I'm never going to get there if I continue to focus on all of these things that are stressing me out. And so I think it's a great, kind of life uh, passport to have those thoughts. Um, what about you, Karen? Where would you be if you had unbridled delusion?
Yeah. I think it's good for us all to ask ourselves, what is that big, hairy, audacious dream, right? What is the thing that, maybe is missing in our life and we don't even realize? And I think asking yourself that question periodically allows for um, constantly redefining yourself and honing in on who you are as you evolve through life, right? I feel like I sound like a Hallmark card right now. But I really think there's relevancy in that. And I think, if you had asked me at different stages in my career that question, I would have different answers for you. And I just think that for all of us, regardless of where you are, if you're early in your career, you're mid-career, you're senior in your career, think it pays to ask that question. Like, what is that big, hairy, audacious dream that maybe is laying like underneath the surface and you haven't got there yet? So just say once you've identified that, we have to identify how do we find the person who can be our mentor. Jordan, you want to
Yeah.
take that away and lead us through that?
Yeah, no, I think Robin's gonna, kind of lead the session, but I don't want to steal her thunder or anything. But I mean, I do think mentors come in different shapes and forms, right? And I think a lot of us always expect our mentor to be exactly like us, but a few years ahead on the path, as a which is often not necessarily correct or true. Again, people have different personalities, they have different motivations, they have different circumstances that make sense in their life that aren't applicable to where you are in yours or where you want to be in 5 and 10 years. So I think reframing the idea of what we a lot of times default to, which is identifying somebody that we think we want to be just like, and often thinking about, maybe something in the different realm, right? We learn a lot from the things we don't know, and you don't know until you go and find them out, right? And so sometimes your mentor is is somebody who is doing something very different than what you think you might want to do. And you can learn from them as well. And so I think expanding the definition of what a mentor is. And while, as a female in my old day and age, I felt like I didn't have a lot of female mentors to look to. And so by default, I had a lot of male mentors in the space, which did provide a lot of powerful insight. And I think exactly goes to speak to what I'm saying, which is they certainly weren't me or where I needed to be or had the same life circumstances, right? They didn't have the same pressures as a wife or as a mother. But I think I learned a lot from, some of not having those things be attached to you, what it looks like to be an interventional pain doc and a researcher and a KOL and a society member. I think that was also extremely important as well. It gave me an understanding and a sense of how to compartmentalize and how to get to that location and have those goals. In addition to finding the women in our space who are doing it well. But, back in our day, we didn't have a lot of that came ahead of us, which is why we created the Society of Women Innovators and why we have, an amazing annual conference and an amazing Sunday workshop that everybody needs to stay for next year. So, Robin, what were you
I
going
think
to
we're all
say?
really grateful for the society. I think you can definitely tell it's a different energy when you go to that conference. It's a little bit more nurturing and empowering. The intention is definitely palpable when you go. And I think that's one of the things that I personally really appreciated. I have a question for Dr. Patel. When looking for a mentoring style, what kind of setting would you recommend, maybe for one reason over another, in terms of a group mentoring setting versus a formal one-on-one mentoring or a peer-to-peer or even something long distance like a virtual mentor? What would you recommend and in what context?
I think the first step is to look at your lifestyle, right? And to look at where you are in life and to look at the time that you have and to be honest of what's going to fit with your schedule the best. There are amazing, as you know, societal opportunities for mentorship. Win with Nance has just kicked off the mentorship mastermind program, which is a small group mentorship design. And that may work, but sometimes for some people, they may not be able to meet a specific date that many have agreed on, right? You may be, maybe you have a young child and, or multiple young children and you don't know, your schedule isn't as regular. So a one-on-one is possibly better in that stage of life. So I think people have to be honest with the realities of their schedule. And, that's the first thing. And then I think once you kind of establish that, like what's going to work for you in terms of time commitment and what that's going to look like and the flexibility, like if it's one-on-one, maybe there's more flexibility. If it's group, maybe there's not as much. I think, and if it's in person, right, or versus virtual, that also, can be relevant to somebody's lifestyle and what fits for them. But beyond that, like there might be different aspects of your life for which you want mentorship in different ways, right? So we talk about, healthy living and lifestyle. And maybe that is being part of a group mentoring session where you're part of a group fitness class and you become friends with the people there who will really actually allow you to kind of make changes in your life that make substantial changes to your health and your nutrition. That's one way that mentorship can look. And people don't think of it that way, but that could be something that might fit into your lifestyle. Another aspect is a one-on-one relationship, such as any of the societies, INS has one, the RFS system within NANS has one. It's a one-on-one mentorship program where you can decide the time, and then there's an actual curriculum that you go over. That's another way. That's a much more structured. So it kind of depends on I think what your lifestyle looks like, and the realities of your life. And then I think it depends on the area of mentorship and how you feel those needs are going to be met the best.
I think that's a great way of pointing out some of the unique, advantages, and then also keeping in mind, uh, inadvertently bringing in that work-life balance where you keep your lifestyle and what's going to work for you best. I think that's one of the things that stands out to me the most about this is moving into a space of ease and flow versus trying to twist yourself into a million pieces to make something work. I resonate with that.
Yeah, I think if you do that, it's just not going to be successful, right? You're not going to be happy. Your counterpart isn't going to be happy. Your mentor may not be happy with you either. You want it to kind of feel natural and something you're excited about because you're not stressed about making it fit and making it work.
Yeah, I think making it mentorship fun is important as well. One of my favorite uh, pastimes is getting together with the other Atlanta pain physicians, the female, we call our Atlanta pain ladies, and we meet for brunch like once a quarter, and we're doing a high tea for the holidays. But I mean, it's a wonderful time for fellowship but mentorship is happening, right? That's where people are asking their questions of each other and they're getting, one-on-one time and advancing their careers and different opportunities. And so I think you can make mentorship fun. It doesn't always need to be like a one-on-one Zoom or, phone call or anything like that. So don't forget to make it fun.
Yeah, you raise a really good point though, but you have to create access, right, to people. And I think some of these networking opportunities create access so that you can identify people who may be able to mentor you in different aspects of your life. So I think, networking is essential to being able to identify some of the mentors. You might find some at work, you might find some in your community, you might find some people who you just reach out to because from afar, you emulate their work or you want to emulate their work rather. But I think going and having access to societal meetings, going to local meetings, community meetings, is really essential to kind of create that access.
Yep. Robin and we met where? Was it Nans or Aspen?
I think we met at WIPM actually, and
you wanted to take a picture of me, right?
I did.
No,
I
Lisa and I were
like
trying to take a picture. Yeah. And you
like
were like, I'll take it, right? So, I mean, just jumping in there and introducing yourself to people, networking, being at the right time at the right places, right? And so conferences are a wonderful opportunity, whether it's WIPM, NANS, Aspen, ASRA, whatever, but going where the people are and then being open and engaging, you often will, find your mentor right in front of you.
That's a great segue to our next section. How do you find a mentor?
Right. So, I mean, I think I answered my own question, but I think, besides societal engagements, let's say, you leave this webinar and you're at home, back at the grind doing these things, and you decide, I'm going to do a deep dive. I'm going to do my journaling. I'm going to identify areas where I need mentorship. And let's say, I've decided I would really like to become a KOL in the space, and I don't even know where to start. So how do you find a mentor? Do you walk up to a KOL or do you cold call, or, what else can you do to identify that next step? Or, if you want to be more broad, maybe it's not KOL, but what do you think, Dr. Patel?
I think people ask that a lot, how do you become a KOL? And I think you got to find your passion first within the space, right? And so it's a topic that's related, but I think it needs to be touched on that, you don't start from the top and say, I want to just be this, but it's like, why do you want to be this? And what are the things that you're passionate about? And let that lead you to who you may reach out to. And I think that's what it is. So, if we're talking about specific therapies, what are the disease states or what are the therapies that you feel passionate about? Allow that to lead you to what you're gonna really excel in and what you potentially have the greatest strength to be a quote unquote KOL. Such a crazy term to me.
Such a crazy term. It gives cringe. I don't know.
Yeah,
So
I do. I get a little
yeah,
like,
yeah.
so,
But
but
so besides signing up to be in like a
yeah.
one-on-one mentor-mentee relationship through a formal society, how else can you find a mentor, Robin or Karen?
I
What do
think
you
it's
think?
great. I think it's great to like if okay, we're talking about specific pain therapy things to suggest like, hey, reach out to somebody that you whose career that you admire and say, hey, I'd love to work on this project for you. I'm with you. I'm curious about this topic, right? So maybe you're starting doing a literature search, right? Or and writing a review article on a topic. Or maybe you have a clinical question and you have an idea for a collaborative research study. That's not too, for those of you who are residents and fellows on this call, that's not something that's unreasonable. I think that would be amazing. And I encourage you, if you are of that mindset, to pursue that. Um, something I've done myself, is in an area that I was looking to, I kind of, fell into this rabbit hole of like marketing through storytelling. And I wanted to expand on that. And I wanted to, really immerse myself in that. And I reached out to somebody who was in like a completely unrelated field, but like really an expert in, you know, explaining medical therapy. So I think there's a lot of what we do is very complex, and explaining that to patients, we need to be mindful of their healthcare literacy level. So for me, my deep dive that I did was wanting to dive into that and to learn more and to see how I can expand myself in that area. And so I reached out to somebody on LinkedIn. I sent them a long, what I felt like was like a love letter, which was like, oh my God, I love your work. And like, I really like admire the way you think about things and stuff like that. And lo and behold, they responded to me, and I'm totally not even in their field. They're in cardiology, and here I am in, pain medicine. So I think there's some of that too. So if you always come from genuine, like a place of being genuine, and you identify somebody who's doing something that you admire, and you strive to be like whatever quality, I think reach out to them. And I think just be genuine in what you're interested in and your passions, and it's not going to lead you in the wrong direction.
Yeah, definitely, right? Shoot for the stars. You'll fall among, or shoot for the moons, fall among the stars, right? Yeah, lovely. But I mean, right, like we said, just unbridled delusion, go for the top, and the worst they're going to say is no. And it always works to just ask, right? I think, our relationship started with like, hey, do you mind if I come spend some time with you in your clinic while I'm on a external rotation or a vacation or whatever, right, Robin?
Yeah, and I agree with both of you. Joy spreads, and it should come from a place of genuine joy so that it feels effortless and it flows. And that's honestly some of the best things that I've come across. To answer your question about where some places that you could find mentors, attending conferences was a great way to just expose me to the field, because coming into it, I was very naive and didn't know anyone. And so kind of getting to get a feel for their talks and their styles, and then approaching them one-on-one. I personally felt comfortable doing that. I know that maybe not everyone will. Like Dr. Patel mentioned, you can write a love letter, or you can ask a clinical question if you really enjoyed their talk and, want to learn a little bit more about it, or participate like in a literature search. Sometimes speaking with your peers can also be helpful. I know that I first learned about Dr. Tate through Alexa, who, was just enamored. And then I said, I need to meet this person for myself. And I really want to see. And I'm like, I see it. It's there. And I also had a really genuine, just like passion for the same, topics, and just I thought it was a great fit. And so that kind of led me to reach out. So all of those ways are great ways. If you don't know anyone, I think going to a conference is a great way to meet someone that's maybe more like you, or maybe someone that's not, that could push you outside of your comfort zone, to Dr. Tate's point from earlier. So all of those ways are great ways. Just do what feels right, and don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Because in the words of Dr. Seuss, the people who matter don't mind, and the people who mind don't matter. So be yourself.
One of my faves. So once you feel like you have found a mentor, what are some identifying features of that mentor that, you are attracted to, that resonate with you? what if you have a selection of mentors to choose from, what makes a good mentor?
So if you're asking me specifically, I
Sure.
I think personal interest and engagement for me has really helped. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care, sort of feeling. Just understanding that someone, understood my passion and was willing to kind of augment that or work with that. Other things that I think made sense to me, at least particularly from a comfort zone perspective initially, were someone who I kind of could understand their way of thinking or their approaches to problem solving. It just seemed more intuitive for me. Practice setting was also something that was alluring to. I went straight to what you talked about earlier, which was this is the person that I'm like, this is what I wanted to do, and I want to be this. And that initially was what grew me. Now I'm trying to lean more into the other side of what's something completely different that I never even thought about doing, or even further of a stretch, still working on, is if you could have that unbridled delusion and let yourself dream wildly. It's still a little bit of a stretch for me. And what does that look like? What would that life be for me? I think all those are great exercises. Initially, I would go with what feels maybe the most comfortable for you if you're just breaking into the space of finding a mentor, so that it works and it's something that is not going to be too big of a task or something you shy away from. Whatever feels most comfortable to you.
Karen,
What?
have you ever found, I love it. Thank you, Robin. Karen, have you ever found a mentor or gotten into a mentor-mentee relationship where it just wasn't the right fit? And what were some of those signs or issues that showed up?
I think the first one, sometimes it's schedule and it's nobody's fault. It's just schedule, it's just restraints on the like what people's lives look like. I think that's one of the things. And then I think, for those of us who have been, are in a different stage in life, we still need mentorship, right? At any stage in life, there, you can always be a mentor and receive mentorship. Be a mentee or be a mentor. I think it's also understanding sometimes that not one person is everything. Like you don't need to be a carbon copy of exactly the way they are, right? You can live a totally different lifestyle in terms of, just other things, like just, maybe somebody is, like myself, who's not married and doesn't have kids, right? And you're married and you have multiple kids, but yeah, we can have a mentorship relationship. So understanding that, it's parts of somebody's life and someone's career or lifestyle that you may want to obtain mentorship in. It doesn't have to be everything all the time. There might be somebody who you have multiple overlaps with, and there are multiple areas, but I think sometimes it's understanding that, there's no pressure to make yourself like a carbon copy of somebody. That's not what mentorship is, It's to get some clear deliverables in how you can achieve your own personal goals, right? Um, I think that's
I think that's a great transition to how do you define those clear deliverables? How do you verbalize that or how do you express that and ultimately set expectations so that we can put this mentorship relationship on the right course, to bring it back to our transportation analogy, right? Mentorship in motion. How do we get this sailing smoothly and set it up for the best cruise?
Yeah, I think that's something that is, I think, and I don't know if this resonates with any of the women on the call or for either of you, you know, when we go through our medical training, it's like you go to high school, you want to get to the best college, you want to get to the best medical school, the best residency, the best fellowship, the best first job, right? And sometimes you don't ask yourself, what are your aspirations? And sometimes it's hard, especially for women, I feel, to to be able to state that. What are your aspirations? What are your goals? And I think that has to be crucial in the mentorship relationships that you define, like getting very granular. From this relationship, what am I looking to gain? And come with that and approach your potential mentor and say, hey, look, I'm looking for this. These are the things that I'm looking to gain. So I think first and foremost, you have to dial down and dial into what are your true aspirations and what you're hoping to gain from that relationship. And and then deciding the next step, what does that look like? How does that manifest itself? How does it look like in your life? How does that look like in your mental state? Maybe there's clear deliverables. Maybe it's a new procedure. I want to really integrate sacral iliac joint fusion in my practice, and you're the person to help me do this. And by the first quarter, I want to have treated 5 patients. So maybe you have something very granular, very specific. I think it depends on the area of mentorship that you're receiving, but either way, I think just dialing in on truly what is your goal, and then being as specific as a way to assess whether you're meeting that goal, and then deciding what the timeline might be. Jordan, what do you think?
I mean, I just think that the entire idea of setting expectations or defining parameters is something that I never really gave a lot of thought or care to. I think, I always said, I want to find a mentor. I have questions. I need to know how to get to where you are, or I need to figure out how I can stay away from where you are. Like I said, identifying some people maybe that give you their advice, and you say it's exact advice I'm not going to take. But and then I've always, once I kind of got to a place where I felt like, hey, I'm doing pretty good. I'd like to see other women thrive in the space. I'd like to be a mentor. But it never had occurred to me until we kind of put this topic together, really, about, how important it is to DTR and define the relationship and understand what each other's motivations are, and understand what each other is planning to and hoping to achieve by entering into this non-binding contract of mentor-menteeship relationship. And I feel like, it's making me be a little introspective about times where I feel like the effort has failed. I have, been assigned mentor or mentees through a few societies, and, you would meet up for a phone call or two, and then it would just sort of, kind of feather out. There'd be missed phone calls, or, hey, you have time to talk, or how did that conversation go with your boss, or whatever. And then it's like crickets, and you're kind of left scratching your head of like, did we achieve what we came to achieve and now it's over? Or was there a misstep? Was there a misunderstanding of what each other was expecting? Or, am I bad at this? Right. And so I think, being more mindful and specific about what those expectations and parameters should be, the cadence of the relationship, how long we want to spend trying to achieve these goals. Is this a one-time conversation so I can help you understand how to pivot from fellowship to, attendinghood, or do we expect this to be a lifelong endeavor? I'd really never given a lot of thought to that, and I think going forward, it's going to be a very important part of this. And I think one recommendation, or where this idea also came out of, was a conversation that we had at Aspen with a friend, Tiffany Dunn, who's with Boston Scientific, and she had specifically recommended this book that really brought this notion up. And so I'll just reference that. It's called 1 Minute Mentorship. And the idea, or 1 minute mentoring rather, is, how to find and work with a mentor and how to benefit from being one, is the subtitle. But, she was really explaining this concept of, once you engage with a mentor, the very first thing you need to do is to identify, why did you guys both show up to this meeting of the minds? What is it that you want to get out of it? So I think it's great advice.
So, Robin, I actually think exactly, as we've been thinking about these things and like forming this series and my involvement with the mentorship mastermind with Win, like I've been thinking about, what is the responsibility of the mentor to also ask the mentee to dial in on that? Because I feel like I now see in my fellows, like, and the younger people that I'm interact with, that like they haven't ever been asked, like, what is your aspiration? They've just tried to do the best and be the best, and so I think some of it falls on the mentor to kind of also dial in and say, hey, what are your goals? Because it might be the first time that somebody's even brought that up. I mean, what do you think, Robin? What's the best thing that, you know, a mentee can do to dial in, or a mentor can prompt you to dial in?
I agree. Asking the question. And once you have to put words to the ideas, it becomes a little bit more fluid. And it's also a very insightful process to understand what is it exactly that I'm striving for. And then I think once you can put those things that you're aiming for into words, it becomes more, I would say, easier, if I had to like just this quickest way to say it, to put that into like an actionable item. Like, for example, if I'm wanting to work on networking, okay, well, what really specific with networking? I want to be able to have genuine connections with people that are actually have some meaning, and that, you know, walking away from that conversation, I feel like I could reach out to that person in the future if needed, and it would be well received. Okay, so seems like you want to, you know, hone in on your maybe communication skills. Let's talk about what part of those communication skills do you think could be boosted a little bit. Is it initiating? Is it listening? Is it sort of finding common topics that can sort of create that connection if there's one to be had? And then I think a great piece to add on to that would be, you know, defining those parameters. You know, Crucial Conversations, great book, have to throw it out there. Step number one, start with heart. Step number two, what do you want for yourself? What do you want for the other person? And what do you want for the relationship? And then find a way to communicate all of that, you know, so that then everyone's on the same page.
I think that's great.
I think we're ready to wrap it up actually, guys, but I think this has been a really wonderful kickoff to our series. We do intend to host another quarterly webinar mentorship event in the first quarter of 2025, and then again in late spring. And then we hope everybody will join us at our annual meeting. We are opening this up to Q&A. So in your chat box, go ahead and type in your questions. We've received a couple already, so we'll get started on those in just a second. But before anybody leaves, I want to make sure that everyone knows I am super grateful for Dr. Patel and for Dr. Mata joining us this evening, and for all of you women out there who listen to us rattle on. Hopefully you've gleaned some super important information. If you've been, you know, sitting at home wondering, how do I find a mentor? What does that look like? What does that mean for me? And how can it move me forward? And so we'll jump into our first question. I think, Dr. Patel, I'm going to throw this to you. It's about being that KOL. Being a KOL, is that specific to drugs or products, or are there KOLs with respect to business or leadership? Have you heard of, you know, being a key opinion leader as a physician that's not tied to device or industry? And I'd also like to hear what this cardiologist recommended to you after your love letter.
Yeah, so I think there definitely are KOLs in the business of pain, right? We talk about this, people who are helping to run large practices like yourself. I would consider you a KOL in business management of pain medicine, Dr. Jordan Tate, um, for sure. In terms of leadership, absolutely. You know, there's so many fantastic societies in pain medicine. You know, there's Aspen, there's NANS, there's INS, there's WIPM, right? And people who understand how to lead societies and lead through different aspects, right? So there's advocacy, right, in terms of therapies and access to therapies. There's um, there's avenues of education, right? And expanding education. You know, ASRA does an amazing job at that. NANS does an amazing job at that. And I think there are definitely KOLs for education and business and leadership for sure. I think specific to therapies, there are as well. If somebody is truly passionate about something, that there's a therapy that they really believe in, which I can relate to. I think that isn't another way of being a KOL. So certainly there are different ways. The person that I reached out to was a KOL who is a thought leader in kind of the way physicians, we bring technology to patients, and how we have that conversation with them, and how we meet them at their healthcare literacy level. And so that is something that I've been focusing on and doing a deeper dive on, because I think it can be varied with a lot of the patients we see. So that's an area that I specifically sought mentorship. And I would say that the person that I sought mentorship was a KOL in patient education and outreach. And I don't even think that does what their expertise is justice, but that's how I would define it in this moment.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a very broadly applicable title. As much as we were cringing on the KOL, I think it's just thrown around so much, and
I think in the pain industry, you know what I mean?
yeah, it
Like,
just becomes a little overutilized. And I like the
yeah.
idea maybe more of like thought leader, perhaps, or, but I mean, again, if anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, let me just define KOL as a key opinion leader, right? And so, I mean, in essence, it's similar to, the idea behind a thought leader. But, I think, like you said, I started a pain practice, and we own several ASCs, and I've, had Becker's ASC conference reach out to me and say, you're an ASC owner, we would love to have you come and speak on your experience at our conference, right? And so that was an opportunity that's completely, severed from any sort of pharma or device company representation, right? And so there's a lot of different opportunities. And I would like to, I would say even what we're doing right now, I mean, we are being KOLs for WIPM in the mentorship space, right? And I think WIPM in general, if you attend a conference and you get to listen to people, discuss their passion for nutrition, for patient care, and it can be very, very different than going to a conference that's maybe more focused on device and
Yeah.
industry representation. Robin, do
You
you
know,
have any thoughts there?
I have to say
Yeah.
something real quick. So when I had my fellow, Evie, right? And she said, "You want to go back to Atlanta?" I said instantly, I said, I knew the person that she had to talk to was you. And in my mind, I wanted you to be a mentor to her. So my recommendation in the early part of her career was to pursue working alongside somebody who could be her mentor. So the reason I bring this up is that if there are people who that are want to go to a geographic area, and somebody who's fantastic in that area, advocate and point it out and put the people together. And that's what WIPM is about. And I was so happy Evie's working with you, and I love seeing the
Yes,
posts, and I love seeing all
to
the
close the loop.
information.
Yeah, I mean, you set the mentorship in motion, and it's so she works in my practice, and she's currently sitting at my desk, and we're working side by side on every single patient and discussing each patient and how to best optimize their plan of care, and how to best understand all of the fundamentals of running a practice and being in private practice and providing excellent care and being patient-centric, and being evidence-based. So yeah, it's a very intimate mentor-mentee relationship right now, because she's literally sitting at my desk every day. So it's wonderful.
Wonderful.
Robin, do you have any final thoughts? There's also a question about whether obtaining coaching skills would be helpful in mentorship, and how that is relevant and how that plays in.
I think that makes sense in terms of, some of the thoughts that were already discussed earlier tonight, in terms of helping people to elucidate what their goals and aspirations are, so that they can better formulate a plan to achieve them, and have, some tangible takeaways from that relationship would be great. In terms of being able to let's say, pivot to different teaching styles. If that's not something that you feel, comes innate to you, or even if it is, definitely learning about different coaching skills will help you either augment your natural ability or build a foundation that you can then continue to expand. All of those, it never hurts. Another great point from the book of Crucial Conversations is it's kind of a scenario where the rich get richer. Those people that are having those thoughts of, hey, maybe if I were to reach out and, speak with other people that are either, I think are advanced in terms of coaching or communication or emotional intelligence or whatever the particular skill might be in terms of coaching, or look up a book or a podcast or some other resource to augment, are most likely people that have, some inclination or proclivity towards that at baseline and are looking to grow their repertoire so that they can be even stronger. And so I think absolutely, growing those coaching skills will probably benefit both yourself and the mentee.
I love it. I think that might be all the questions. If anybody else has one, you have a couple of minutes to throw it in the chat. And we really look forward to continuing the conversation on our next webinar. I would certainly appreciate any feedback from anybody who is on tonight. If you want to reach out later and let us know your thoughts or what you would like to see in upcoming webinars, because we're still in discussion about the development of the next steps. And ultimately hope to see you all in Scottsdale, Arizona in June 5th through the 8th. We're going to be at the Scott Resort. We were there 2 years ago. It was a huge hit, a big success, a very, very special location, a beautiful meeting, and we hope to recreate some of the magic in the desert again with all of you. And also make sure as you make your travel plans to stay on Sunday for the workshop where we can really unpack some of these things one-on-one and face-to-face. Let's see, there was one more question here. How does one find a mentor with the goal to feel less overwhelmed in the vastly growing space of pain, procedure, innovation, and constantly feeling behind? I think we all know that feeling. At some point in our lives, we've resonated with that. It's very easy to feel overwhelmed and constantly behind with so much going on in the space. It's very rapidly moving. It's very fast paced. And how to find a mentor. So I think, number one is identifying with yourself. I think this is a great way to summarize what we've discussed so far, right? Identifying yourself, what you're looking for in a mentor, what areas you think you need mentorship in. Number two, thinking about where you want to be in the future, what your goals are, and what that roadmap is to get there. Even if it's, as we said, unbridled delusion and the big, what was it, hairy, ambitious monster or something?
Big, hairy, audacious goal. Yes.
Audacious goal. I like it.
Yeah.
And then, don't be afraid to reach out and ask. If it's somebody on LinkedIn, if it's somebody famous, if it's somebody that's a partner in your practice, if it's somebody at a conference, it doesn't hurt to ask. You never know, the response you might get might be very positive and could turn into a lifelong friendship like Robin and I. It was a very simple, like, hey, can I come visit you sometime and spend some time, right? Next thing you know, we're writing papers and getting her on the podium and, doing amazing things, right? So,
And I think
just ask.
I think that's a great point. I think it's, the way the question was worded, it's like, how do you feel less overwhelmed? Well, turn it around to be something coming from a place of positivity. Think about, is there a gap within the way you treat patients that you feel that there's a therapy that needs to fill that gap? And if that is the space, then go and obtain training in that procedure. Don't be motivated. Don't be compelled or pressurized by the me too. Everyone else is doing it, so I have to do it. Think about it. Do you really something I feel passionately about is how do you vet technologies that you're going to bring in your practice? One, does it physiologically make sense to you? Two, does it fit a patient need that you have currently with your patients? Three, is it something that has evidence that supports it? And then real world evidence. And then lastly, is it something you feel confident in your hands? right? So don't be so pressurized to be part of that. Me too, everyone's doing it, so I have to do it. Really ask yourself, does this help meet a clinical goal within your practice? So, I hope that gives a little granularity to that question, particularly there. But I think it's the overriding question is why? Why are you doing the things? Why are you spending time getting trained in a different procedure? Why are you, you know, putting your attention? Something we talked about, Jordan, we've talked about this is where do you give your attention to? What are the things in your life you give attention to? What are the challenges in your life that you give attention to? And I really mentorship webinars that we do.
I like what you said, Dr. Patel, about perspective. I think the only thing that I would add, coming from like a trainee perspective, looking at this question, I can definitely understand the overwhelmingness. The first time I was introduced to all of these advanced procedures was as an intern, already knowing I want to do PM&R, I want to do pain. And when I found that out, I was kind of like gobsmacked initially, and it felt very overwhelming. I think for me, what helped was seeing a female, someone that looked like me, doing these procedures. And she said to me, if I can do this, you can do this. I promise. It's not that hard. Yes, there's things that you'll need to learn, but that comes over time and it's a step-by-step process. So don't feel like you need to understand all of it, everything right now. That's not possible. Just understand that you're gradually going to learn about these things and come at it from, like Dr. Patel was saying, a place of like curiosity and interest and positivity. And like, isn't this so exciting? So, obviously no one has time to watch all the webinars, but if you see a topic on a webinar from like one of the societies that comes up, attend that webinar. And then you'll learn a little bit about that topic. And the next time you meet someone in the space or in an adjacent field like neurosurgery, you can strike up a conversation and say, hey, I just attended a webinar recently and saw that they're using spinal cord stimulators for recovery of motor function in spinal cord injury patients. It was so interesting. I learned X, Y, and Z. And sometimes that opens doors to other topics that maybe you hadn't initially considered, or a relationship, a thought relationship where you share different ideas and concepts. I think just putting yourself out there, if you see something that interests you, go learn about it and then speak about it with the next person. You spread the idea and it opens yourself up to learning more, but eventually you will learn it.
Yep. Yep. I think those are wonderful insights. And I think anytime we feel overwhelmed, taking the step-by-step approach and just starting small and compartmentalizing and finding the things that we can tackle and that we can achieve, will slowly, grow on one by one. And with that, I think we're at the end of our time, and we really appreciate everybody's time and attention, and I hope you all have a beautiful evening.